will continue our coverage of Godzilla's bloodthirsty warpath through the planet as he eliminates insubordinate titans one by one. In a previous episode, we explained why Godzilla erased Titanus Scylla from the list of titans and how. But in Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, Godzilla was out for blood. After delivering final judgment to the giant crab, he was still not finished. Up next was Titanus Tiamat. But why? What did Tiamat do this time to deserve such fate? Sit back, listen closely, and make sure you smash that subscribe button and get ready for Tiamat's execution explained. After the release of The New Empire, many people amongst the fanbase and even some big outlets started highlighting what was described as a kaiju injustice that happened in this film. Apparently, Godzilla had absolutely no reason to kill Tiamat, much less turn this eviction into an execution. Yeah, from the surface, it seems a little unfair and quite frankly out of character for Godzilla to eliminate a titan out of nowhere. After all, Godzilla is described as a force of nature that keeps balance, not aggressive unless provoked. But in GXK, Godzilla pretty much headed towards Tiamat, who was apparently just chilling in her lair, kicked her out, and then killed her. Well, today we'll find out if this act was in fact unfair or warranted. To find out, we'll have to travel back in time to the events that happened during Godzilla King of the Monsters. Yeah, Tiamat actually had a big role here too. Although not seen in this film, this titan actually inflicted a huge death toll as commanded by Ghidorah, beginning in Stone Mountain, Georgia, possibly dormant in one of the surrounding lakes and making her way to the shore with her hydrokinetic abilities. Being an aquatic titan, her hydrokinetic abilities allow her to easily make her way through dry land back into the sea, leaving potentially millions of dead life forms in her wake. Tiamat is considered a destroyer by Monarch, and because of this, she would obey a destroyer alpha titan like Ghidorah. But this alone is not why she was on Godzilla's blacklist. Remember, both benevolent and malevolent titans were doing Ghidorah's bidding, so this act alone wasn't going to warrant her execution. What she did after these events mattered a lot. Moving forward in time, post-2019, after Godzilla established himself as the new alpha, Godzilla would travel the world, putting the bad titans in their place, making the bad ones submit, even going out of his way to rescue a destroyer titan from humans, and brutally killing one that settled in his old lair, the Genitor Murderfish. Yeah, as you'll soon find out, Godzilla doesn't like anyone staying in his crib. But there happened to be one lair where he used to live previously but got kicked out by this guy. No, we're not kidding, and this is not Kong, by the way. This was another member of the great ape species that actually kicked Godzilla's butt out his home. A pretty humbling experience for Godzilla. But now, after many years, and him being more powerful and evolved this time, he was going to come back and retake it. But that wasn't it. He was going there to kill him. Remember how he had just killed this big fish for being in his old house? Yeah, this one had it coming next. Godzilla didn't stay where the big fish was because it had already been destroyed, or stood as collateral damage whenever Serizawa blew up the nuke to help him heal. This helped Godzilla, but he ended up losing his house as a result. So now Godzilla sets his sights on an old lair he once called home, where this ape was. Or so he thought. Once arriving on the shores of his old lair, Godzilla was quickly ambushed by a much more dangerous titan. Who? Well, you guessed it, Tiamat. Now, Godzilla already had a good reason to dislike Tiamat, but why was she here? After King of the Monsters, all remaining titans went back to their lairs, and Tiamat just went to find something more comfortable and isolated. Arriving here, either killing off the ape that kicked Godzilla out of here many years back, or just simply moving in after this ape had already died. Whatever the case, Godzilla didn't give a crap. What mattered was that she was here, and she needed to get out. But instead, Tiamat came out swinging, ambushing Godzilla and taking him into deep water, cutting him from all directions, temporarily blinding him and almost killing him. Had it not been for the abrupt change of terrain, Godzilla would have had a much harder time. But note how this time Godzilla didn't use his atomic breath. Yeah, Godzilla made her submit using his land advantage and stomped her into submission. She agreed and left. Perhaps Tiamat was too valuable of a Titan to kill right there. After all, she submitted and Godzilla let her leave in peace. But that doesn't mean Godzilla didn't hold a grudge here. From here on, as per the novelization of GXK The New Empire, Tiamat actually obeyed and found another place to settle. After the events of Godzilla Dominion up to the year 2027, Tiamat had been compliant to Godzilla's command to stay out of trouble. Monarch had actually tracked her for months. There were absolutely no recorded incidents or even rumors of Tiamat causing trouble. In fact, it was mentioned in the novel that her whole objective was to stay away from Godzilla. A completely different mindset than what Scylla had, who, on the other hand, actually wanted a rematch. So now come the events of GXK, and Godzilla was picking up on the Iwi's Hollow Earth distress calls, which made him seek more sources of radiation to become stronger for the upcoming threat. Ironically though, Godzilla ended up doing the exact same thing Scylla did before she squared up with him. The G-Man proceeded to visit a few power plants and siphon up the energy exactly as Scylla did earlier. This in turn allowed Godzilla to become more radioactive. So much, in fact, that even being near him at the time was life-threatening. Whatever, or whoever Godzilla was heading towards, was about to have a really bad time. And it turned out that Titanus Tiamat happened to be the next stop. Coincidentally, Godzilla was making his way to the Arctic Pole not really because of Tiamat, but because of the valuable resource that was located where Tiamat lived. Tiamat's lair happened to be right in the trajectory of electromagnetically charged solar winds, the same stuff that instigates auroras. This location made it one of, if not the largest stockpile of energy on the surface of planet Earth. Did this have any effect on Tiamat? Most definitely yes. You may have noticed that Tiamat looks a bit different from her form back in Godzilla Dominion. Back in 2019, Tiamat emerged looking like a sea serpent with longer fins, two of which may have served as wings or fins to help her propel through air and water. Her bioluminescence would fall within the blue, aqua, and purple tones. After she left Godzilla's old lair, she decided to settle here, the largest stockpile of energy on the surface world. In GXK, she takes on a much different form. A larger array of fins with the sharpness of obsidian and hardness of titanium, 4 small stubby limbs to aid her in steering underwater, and, most notably, a pink coloration similar to the energy that was being stored in this area. Like Scylla, Tiamat may have also gone through some evolution during her dormancy here, absorbing the radiation giving her this pink glow, and developing body attributes that help her maneuver this icy landscape better, cutting through glaciers without any problems. Was it a coincidence that Tiamat chose this spot? Maybe, but Godzilla may have seen things differently.
The portals that connect our world to the other dimension are called gates.
If we're really going to try to understand why Godzilla killed this kaiju, let's for a moment drop all bias and think like Godzilla for a brief moment. First and foremost, we must mention that the novelization gave no good reason as to why Godzilla decided to go as far as killing Tiamat. All Titans that Godzilla has killed in the past were killed because they provoked Godzilla. And Monarch didn't seem to find a good reason other than that the G-Man just wanted to take over this energy. But that's a boring answer. If Godzilla just wanted this energy, he would have just told Tiamat to move aside. Well, he did. In the film, Godzilla lets out an atomic blast that pierced the icy lair where Tiamat resided to try to get her out. It was Tiamat's next actions that sealed her fate. This would have been the second time that Godzilla kicked her out of a lair, and now that she had absorbed more energy and her fins had become much sharper, she thought she stood a chance against Godzilla this time. Big mistake. Remember, Godzilla already held a grudge against Tiamat for daring to ambush him in his own house. And to make matters worse, Godzilla now saw Tiamat as an even greater threat. She was now wielding the same energy that he needed to become more powerful. Who knows, maybe Tiamat stayed dormant, giving the illusion of compliance, but at the same time becoming more powerful, and thus making her likely to cause more destruction in the future. We'd like to think of Godzilla as a big picture thinker, thinking ahead and, in some way, managing the Titans, determining which ones would be of good use and which ones should be disposed of because it would be too risky to keep them alive. And Tiamat had just turned into one of those threats. a destroyer titan who now just became more powerful, daring to fight Godzilla again, and on top of that, someone who had already previously disrespected Godzilla. Yeah, Big G wasn't going to let her get away this time. It was just too risky. So, what the G-Man did to Tiamat can be pretty much seen as an executive decision. Not everyone has to understand, but maybe he knew something Monarch didn't. Admittedly, if anyone saw this happen and wasn't aware of the context before Godzilla turned Tiamat into cooked sashimi, then Godzilla would have actually looked like a tyrant. But we're not concluding this episode without explaining how Godzilla killed Tiamat. Titanus Tiamat, after being drawn out by the G-Man's atomic breath, goes on the offensive first, coiling around the G-Man just as she did in Godzilla Dominion, cutting into his hide. Godzilla immediately bites into her flank and rips a piece off. Again, if Godzilla wanted to kill Tiamat, he would have done it already with the atomic breath. But no, Tiamat, instead of leaving, decides to go for the head of Godzilla, smothering him with her 4 petal-like appendages. Well, at this point, Godzilla had enough. Now, the book says that there was an explosion first, and then the atomic breath followed. So, the explosion may have actually been Godzilla letting out another pulse to get Tiamat off of him, and then proceeding to slice her up with the atomic breath. Or it could have just been the atomic breath from the start. The point is, Godzilla diced her up, mutilated her corpse, and decapitated